Shit, what's cracking, hustlers?
Yo, 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 welcome to the Hustlers HQ podcast. I'm your main man, Tumai, and rolling with me is the queen herself. What's up, y'all?
What's up, y'all? I'm Audrey, and let me tell you about me. I'm your in house aromatherapist and essential oil coach, ready to drop some knowledge on the incredible power Mother Nature's got in her arsenal.
And a little something about me, I'm your go to breath facilitator and coach, here to unlock that breath awareness within your own body and master those breathing beats.
And welcome to episode 2 of season 1 of Holistic Hustle HQ. I'm your host, Audrey, and this is a very special episode because we get to interview Tumai, my partner in crime, my best friend, and the co founder of Holistic Hustle. Say hi.
Yo, 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 what's up?
So I'm really excited because I've known Tumai for a while now, and I've gotten to know him really well. And I think not many people have gotten to know this side of him. So it's really exciting that he's going to open up a little, perhaps, on today's podcast episode. And I'm going to start with a question for him. And it might start trickling open some more questions or more answers and secrets of the mystery man. But I want to ask you, Tumai, what is the origins of your nickname that you grew up having, which is Tumeke Tumai?
Oh, I'm not too sure about the whole opening up piece because I am quite an introvert, thus the mysterious side of me. But my name or nickname that I was given by a lot of different friends across time has always been Tumeke Tumai, and it's come from my nature of being like all guns blazing, go for it. I guess in some holistic spaces they call it like a number 9 type energy. I'm like go hard or go home. So it's reflected in the way that I do sport, the way that I've gone to into dating or approaching in the bar or learning different modalities or going all out. I normally just fire everybody, or I've got a tendency to close down the business and then go start a new business. So Tumeka means in my native tongue too much. Like I just go too much and I go too hard.
What is your native tongue? Let the audience know.
Both my parents, if you can't tell on screen, both my parents are from New Zealand. I'm more of the refined type. I was raised in Australia, so I've got an Australian accent. But yeah, both parents and origins and ancestors are from New Zealand. Tainui is the tribe, Waikato is the river, so on and so forth. So that's a little bit about my background, which I'm still learning on a day-to-day basis, a bit about my ancestors and my tribes. Yep.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So, meaning you're Maori, as the Aussies would say, but apparently the correct way to say it is Maori. And I want to ask you a little bit about your parents, actually, and what was so significant about their way of bringing you up as a child, or what was their role in or influence as you were growing up, and how the culture, played a part in that.
How the culture played a part in it. Well, I was raised in a single parent household, mostly around my mother. I didn't have much to do with my dad, but the little that I did have to do with my dad, it was always grand times, like good quality times. I learned a lot about him. And then as I mature, I reflect back and I realize a lot of my characteristics, things that because I wasn't around him, I didn't really know about myself, actually were upon further questioning with my mum with things that my dad did. So that's a little bit about my background. But in terms of culture or where I've come from, my parents left New Zealand and they came to Australia to start a business. So you could say that business has always been in my genes or in my upbringing, entrepreneurship. Also in the parts that I wouldn't naturally admit, the parts that are extremely difficult when it comes to even having to pay off bills or make ends meet. There's parts of me there that have this nature of doubling down, biting down on the mouth guard, and really having to rough it out. Some of those things had been taught to me at a very young age because my mum had to just put two and two together. So having to do business makes sense to me. It is very natural, and figuring out all of the little bits and pieces is something that excites me.
Wow. Well, speaking of business being natural, like what is the earliest memory you have of you running a business? Like, didn't you have something as a kid?
Yeah, I've had multiple things. I think the first one would be purchasing fake Nike shoes from overseas for something like I think it was like $50 for a pair of shoes, and I would choose the colors that were popular in terms of the Nike tick, and I would on sell it for $100 to $120 at school. I would use that money then to pay for my school clothes and my school books. That would kind of be my first little venture out there. But it was always exciting to me, and just learning how to move goods or how to develop software or how to automate marketing, or how to get the word out there at the base level. Seeing my father run three businesses and my mum run business and then also work full time, it was always something that I would understand to be you're working, right? And then when you're not working, you're sleeping and resting just so that you can go back to working again. Later on, that would develop into something more robust, automation, scale, to systemize, to delegate, to lead effectively, to develop teams that could help me get from point A to point B, and then I can help them get from point A to point B, whatever that means for them.
Yeah, I love that. So you were really entrepreneurial from a very young age. And I know a few other stories that you have and other businesses that you've started. But what I get from all this with your character is like you are really adventurous and you take risks. And I think that's part of your nature and what is required when being entrepreneurial. And the things that you used to do when you were very young took a lot of, you know, guts. It took a lot of courage. So I think that must come from somewhere deep down. Like you mentioned to me before that a lot of that had to do with just not having enough growing up, right?
Well, you see, there's risk to having a fully secured job. There's risk to saving money, and I knew that when I would watch my mum, say for example, save money away only for us to still not make ends meet by the end of the month, that could be a combination of mismanagement of money, but it's also reflective of me to look at that and say, well, I don't really want to be in that position. I would much rather stake some of my worth or some of my value on risking it to do really well than to just stay stuck in the same position month in, month out. But also, I feel like the way or the conditions that I was raised under allowed me to develop a resilience, let's say, a resistance to fight for something more. And it conditioned me under high pressure circumstances to develop competence and skill at a very young age. So I had to mature young. My older brother moved out and got married really young, so I was kind of the next in line to be able to fend for the house, make money for the house. I would go off to work. I started working when I was like 14 years old, 15 years old on a construction site. And when you would get 2 weeks off holiday for high school, I wouldn't get any of the 2 weeks off. I would work the entire 10 days to earn money, and I would just take that money and pay for the bills or support mum. So that was my way of being. It was how I was raised.
Yeah. So there's a lot of pressure that you had growing up that created the steps or the actions that you had to take very quickly to rectify things quickly, to adapt quickly, to implement quickly. But tell us a bit more as well. Like I know a lot of your athleticism and your experience in sports has also shaped you into who you are today. And I'm learning so much from that because I myself, I'm not very athletic and I was never athletically inclined other than netball growing up. I learned swimming when I was in my 30s. So I would love to dive into more about your background in sports because it's very interesting and colourful to me. Tell us where you started there and how it evolved.
Yeah, right. I'm really trying my best to go back, but I would say that my first kind of interaction with sports would be climbing trees, falling out of trees, building cubby houses in trees, collecting berries out of trees, throwing berries at other people from the trees. So I had a very climbing monkey nature about myself. I have a monkey character, which is often akin to the jokester type of character, always laughing and good to be around. But I would say after that, on the day-to-day sports from schools, I could just play every sport. It just was natural to me. I spent a lot of time outside. So kicking a football on my left and right foot, throwing on my left and right hand, headbutting on the left side and the right side of my head, that was the norm. And then when it translated into rugby, as my first technical sport, my older brother raised me to put on big hits, to take big hits. And he was, I don't know, maybe, what is he, like 6 years older than me? Maybe more. Yeah, 6 years older. So he was weighing around 100 and something kilos when I was only 50 to 60 kilos, having to push around 14, 15-year-olds. When I would put hits on him and he would make me cry, I would go off sulking. The following day I would recover and then he'd put hits on me again. It would be such numbing pain, like white flashes through my brain, concussion at times. But when I translated it into the field or onto the game scenario, I was conditioned. I put on hits heavier than most boys, and that allowed me to get my first kind of grasp of what success felt like and what it meant in a boy's circumstance in sport, learning teamwork and communication, learning how to play as a team, figuring out how to defend and offend or become offensive at the same time as we're developing defensive strategy. I would soon later on be selected to be the captain of team, so I'd learn how to give speeches, manage team strategy, and manage time as well. So a lot of those things starting off translates into business, translates into day-to-day life, actually translates into how I bring myself to the table when it comes to being a father. So a lot of these different looks. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I see like a really common thread, like with you in sport or with you in life in general. The theme is when you're placed under a certain amount of pressure on a normal day-to-day basis, when push comes to shove, you're able to really shine or overcome those problems or those difficulties. So I think a lot, that plus also your background in even kickboxing. I mean, pretty extreme sports that you've been in, like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, the same Tumeke Tumai, right? Yeah. I've always been the guy that has come back to basics. You see it now in any business, anything that I do. I have always believed that most execution exists within the basics and the fundamentals. If you can operate your fundamentals and get it precise and get the right timing about it, and you can do it consistently, that takes care of most of the hard decisions and moves that you have to make. All of the rest is kind of teamwork. It figures itself out. Someone else picks up the slack. They help you somewhere else. It's the basics and the execution of the basics that have always mattered. That mattered when we were throwing the rugby ball down the line to execute a play. It enabled me to get a goal for the team, but it also mattered when I had to execute a strategy in kickboxing, and it definitely matters when I have to execute within business.
So I think, just it brings to light how important sports is for boys. And for me as a mum, I knew that I wanted my son to participate in a lot of sports. I just thought it was more like, to stay healthy, to stay fit, to be sociable. But so many other positive traits come out of developing your athletic ability, which translate through life, like you've shown me. But also just how quick you are to action on things. Like you even, and how diligent you are in practicing the skills that you pick up. And I want to share as well that translates to your humor too. So I think one of the main things that, brought me or created a warmth between me and Tumai is his ability to make people laugh. Would you believe it? He probably holds that close to his sleeve, under his sleeve. He doesn't share that part of him with everyone. But your sense of humor, and I want to know like how you develop such a good sense of humor. I know you practice like on a daily basis, and we talk about that a lot, So share with us like your first memories of how that came about.
Yeah, look, in sport, there's no such thing as perfect practice. To get perfect practice, or to get perfect in general in gameplay, you must practice perfectly. You have to realize that you can't practice perfectly. You can practice to be better. You can practice consistently. You can practice repetitiously to create patterns, but near impossible to practice perfectly to get perfection. So let's get away from the perfection mindset. And when you start to realize that, you realize also, and you can adapt to this next kind of key that I arrived on, that life is a game. You can really start to use some of these principles to develop charisma, or social abilities that are typically out of the reach of the normal comfort zone. So what I realized at a very young age, that I loved laughing, and I drew closer to people that could make me laugh. And I wanted that ability, the ability to string up or strike within the room, that joke that makes everybody laugh and draws you closer to them. And so I decided, because I was quite bland and scared of social anything, I was raised in the church, so cracking a joke almost felt like a sin. But I just decided to treat it like a game and practice every day on some of those that were close to me. And it's probably taken me 10 years. I would watch comedy shows every single night to see the delivery and the timing,
Yeah.
to understand the different elements and the basic things that they hit. I'd watch videos on charisma. I'd watch videos on charisma before I would go to social events, in the car, the whole hour drive towards that event, so that I could make sure that I understood the basics, and that I hit the basics when I arrived in the room or when I met somebody. So I never had a father that taught me any of these things. I'm self-taught. And often the things that are self-taught become the sharpest tool in the shed, because you have to work on it so much.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned like treating it like a game, and I loved that perspective that you gave me when you first told me that. It's like it completely changed how I viewed everything. So when you treat everything as a game, it's like you want to level up, right? You want to get to the next level in the game. And I love that I can look at things in my daily life, treat it as a game, and try to outpace, outlearn, outskill myself versus looking outside of myself and pressuring myself to perform better than other people. So it's always about improving yourself and being better than who you were yesterday, right? Essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I loved myself.
Yeah, and I love I know, and that's a really good trait to have, because we have to love ourselves first before we can give love to others. And you've really taught me that. Every day you've taught me that, and I've grown stronger from it. And treating life like a game, like you do with humor or with learning a new skill, a new business skill, it really takes the load off, the pressure off, and the seriousness of it. So, yeah, I love that perspective.
I remember when we first used to spend a lot of time together, and when I would get ready in the mornings or sort of wind up for the end of the night, you would hear me say things to myself that for me seemed natural. You have to remember, for everybody, up to put it in context, I stopped dating in general for almost 3 years straight. And then Audrey and I met. So there had been some time lapse between it, but I had always had this character within me. When I get ready, I talk to myself and I say, "Man, you're so funny." Like, I'll laugh at my own jokes. I'll literally I'll be rolling around telling myself jokes. Oh man, the delivery, it's so good. It's so good. And then I'll be doing my hair, but oh man, damn, you look good. Dang. Like, I would be doing this, and I do it because it makes me laugh at myself. One, I'm a little bit more of a serious character at times, so just to get me laughing at myself helps me socially. Because when other people laugh at me, then I'm like laughing along with them. It sort of removes that sharpness to things. But also, you had a little bit of an adjustment to make, because you had never heard someone talk so highly of themselves in this manner.
Yeah, but you've taught me so much that is so important. And being able to laugh at yourself is really important, like you said, because it does, if no one laughs at your joke, at least you've laughed at it. Or if or if people laugh at you when they're not supposed to, at least you have a bit of a sense of humor about yourself. You can be self-deprecating. It doesn't hurt as much, right? And you've got to be your own biggest fan, I think, at the end of the day. So I feel that's what makes you more courageous too, to take risks, to go out, to do things, because it doesn't matter what other people think. You don't need other people to edify you. You can edify yourself. I love that. Yeah.
It does make me curious as to why I wanted to kind of develop this level of influence within myself. It makes me curious also why other people perhaps do not think in this way. I'm curious for others as to what other pathway there is in life other than finding growth areas in our own individual perspectives or areas that we can maybe bring a little bit more laughter towards. Yeah. I mean, it is free. It's just like working on gratitude as well. When we take stock of ourselves, and I mean, that's another big one, reflecting on self and taking stock.
Right.
When you're not even able to do that, then you're not able to make any adjustments. If you're looking to the external world for validation or verification of who you are and what your identity is versus finding it inside and looking at your own stock, then you really don't have any compass as to what you want to develop within yourself. You just end up developing a duplicate of what you see in the social world. So that's something very curious to me, and I'd love to know from you, like, why, what is it that got you to perhaps not look at any of these things? Is it a combination of being too busy in life, or not the right level of support that you perhaps needed at the time?
Yeah, look, it's just about awareness, right? And I think when you get too comfortable, whether it be in your job or whether it be in a relationship, whatever that is, you get comfortable with the way things are. You don't even know that you don't know. And so, or you just kind of give up. You take the path of least resistance because there seems to be so much resistance happening in your life. And for me, it was more about the relationship or the environment didn't really nurture or support self-growth. As much as I tried my best to grow, I didn't realize that you needed another individual that was very active in supporting your self-growth and pointing out things where you can do better. So in our relationship, you're always very aware and conscious of what's going on and what are areas that can be improved upon. Whereas I'm just used to wearing blinkers and going, la-di-da, life is fine, life is good, don't rock the boat, don't create too much trouble for yourself, don't make life too hard.
I've heard you say that quite a bit, don't rock the boat.
Yeah.
Where did that term come from, and what does that mean to you? Like, I want to know, genuinely.
I have no idea. I think it might be a nursery rhyme.
What happens if you rock the boat, though? Have you ever thought in that way? What happened if you rocked the boat?
Well, I think you get a lot of resistance from other people. You get a lot of, say, confrontation or arguments. People might disagree with you. And I think it comes back down to just being not so sure of yourself. So if someone disagrees with you or someone doesn't think it's a good idea, I used to question myself a lot. And I love that about you, is that you're so sure of yourself because you had so much time to reflect or to have some inner reflection and have an inner compass. And I think that takes years and years and years of honing. You need to be around the right environment, the right people. I don't know for you, maybe you can tell me more about who you were around or maybe some of the mentors you had that really played a significant role in your life to help you stay on track, to help you keep honing your skills and becoming better.
Oh, that's easy. Like the first couple of mentors that I had was first and foremost, obviously, was my father for the first couple of years that I had when I was very young. But then the next one was my older brother. He was like the second father to me. Maybe not in the traditional sense, but I modeled off him. I looked up to him and I learned a lot off him. And now I'm better than him. That's just how it but the next modeling kind of mentor that I had would have been from seminars. I was lucky enough to be given a ticket to an event, which initially was real estate and property. But what they were teaching underneath the real estate and property was what mattered to me the most. And I could really feel the values underneath a lot of the speakers. So I ended up going to some of their leadership events and to their extra personal development events, and I ended up being selected to be one of their volunteers, which I ended up staying for very many years, being around high-level Australian speakers, touring around Australia, and also hosting events. That's where I got a little bit more event management skills developed. So Stuart Zadell was somebody who really had an impact in the way that I thought about the world and society and politics and myself and my own inner game and my thoughts and the vibration that I put out. And he really questioned and put me into tight corners a lot of the time. So outside of that, when I was raised in church, I was raised around a lot of men, and these men would take me to building sites, and I would build and develop skills on tools like the hammer and nails and using screwdrivers and circular saws and building homes. So I was always around a lot of men, and I've learned so much from all of them. It's crafted me into being and really enjoying and loving the masculine nature within me, the deep nature that creates frames for women to feel safe within.
Yeah, right. So I think, it's very lucky given like what I know about you and what you've shared with me about your life and your youth, and how you were placed in very difficult circumstances. But then to also be blessed to be around very strong men who could guide you, just keep you on your path and keep you on the straight and narrow and instill values, traditional values that you have. I mean, like, seriously, dude, the values that you have are so rare in this day and age with young, strong men. And I'm just so...
The values from like the 1920s or something?
Yeah, we often joke about...
The good old days, the 20s.
Yeah, we often joke about how Tumai is a lot older than he is, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And we don't know where that comes from, really. I mean, but it's really played a big role in my life and also in my son's life. I think every child needs a very strong male role model and very strong family values. So that's amazing. And I guess you're saying that this is where you got a lot of those values from, with all these different men in your life. How about the women in your life? Like, how did your mum play a role in, what was the most significant thing you learned from her? Perhaps you could share that.
Yeah, sure. There's so much that I learned from my mum. I just want to highlight one part before I transition off the men into the mother type archetype. I think it's really important to highlight that I learned from men how to treat women. I recognized and saw, because I was around a lot of Christian families, both the respect that women had for the male, but also how the men protected the female and the women around us, and how there was this really deep relationship with men reporting to God, their wives reporting to the men, not in a subordinate manner, absolutely not. They're definitely not unequal in terms of responsibility shared or decisions made. They make it all together, but I saw how it worked symbiotically together and beautifully. So when I say learning to be a male or learning to be masculine or to be deep or to create a frame for women, and I learned that off other men, I'm also meaning and including that women learn to be around men when you're masculine like this. I'm also meaning that women learn that this is normal for men to be in this way, for them to be strong and powerful and to make decisions, and for them to be deep and have a frame. I'm meaning that they learn how to respect men because men earn the respect. So there's so much that I mean by that when I put the emphasis and the importance on men being men. There is no value in men being soft or in them being feminine or in them being any other way than what their nature is. And I think we've forgotten how to be men. And this is played out in also the way that I've been viewing culture and learning how to, where I'm from and my kapahaka and different waiata, different song. So then when I transition across to women and to my mum, some of the things that she's taught me have been things pointing me towards becoming more independent as a young boy. One classic one I always highlight is she taught me how to iron my shirt. that has got to be one of the biggest skills that I've learned, because ironing my shirt means that I have to show up on time at a meeting. It means that I hold a certain level of respect for that meeting, that I care for how I look. It means I care for the timing, making sure that I am on time. It also enabled me to extend that care to my speech, to how I performed, to how I considered other people's situation and made decisions. Just simply ironing my shirt, my mum sitting me down, developed so many other key skills. And I knew that I could take that skill and move it across to how I would wear my three-piece suits when I was running a mortgage broker business in finance. So that's one key skill, but I'm sure there's so many more. Hopefully that answers the question.
I love your mum. She is amazing. She's done a phenomenal job raising 5 children. And I think teaching you to learn to iron a shirt has probably translated to many other things, like you said, probably making your bed. Like every morning you're so on top of it. You make your bed. You love to eat rice. Maybe that's another factor we need to factor in, is teaching you how to eat good Chinese food. This guy loves Chinese food. We have rice almost every night in the home, and I love that about him. But also, I think she taught you a lot about, like you said, respect for women as well as what you learned from men. But I think you also learned it from your mum, because she didn't take any BS from you, right?
No.
Or any of her kids.
No. Look, it is also not the same. Mum did her best to have some of the tougher, stronger personality traits that are required for raising boys. But even that is out of balance. That is also a male's job. And so a lot of the time the men around at church would correct me in some of the ways. But my mum's a tough cookie. She has gone through some hard times, and she makes a lot of men look soft these days, to be honest with you. But that's just how it is with these older folk. They just have a stronger handshake. They just have a harder head. They're stubborn. They make hard decisions look really easy. They can make hard decisions and not show emotion. They can move on very quickly, although they carry some of the hard decisions with them or the hard lives with them. It just goes with the territory. I mean, these guys are just coming out of World War II, right?
Yeah.
They're just coming out of having to work factory, having to work with the hard labor with their hands. So it is normal to be that way. And now, because of these soft times, it's really hard to come across deep masculine men.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think you and me alike, we both have this soft spot for much older people in our lives. We look up to them, we respect them, and they have so much value and wisdom to impart upon us. And we often joke about this as well, Tumai, how you often get, or rather you love hanging around older people.
Mm-hmm.
You've always loved being around older people, wise, because for some reason you find that they're wiser, or you have a lot more that you can learn from them. Like, you didn't really hang around people your age, did you?
No, not at all. Yeah. What to say about that? I thoroughly, from a young age, I enjoyed the golden nuggets that they gave to me. I treasured them a lot. I think it's also kind of a combination of being able to read from a Bible and respect some of the scriptures. I've learned a lot of these. Whether anyone believes what's in the Bible or not, you cannot dispute some of the values. When you read through the story and understand what's happening in these stories and some of the things that you can take away, when you're sitting down going over some of these scriptures and there's an open conversation debating different points, it helps you consider deeply what that means to you in your own life. For me, I haven't always been going to church or been reading the Bible. So there is a story on the prodigal son, and there's just so much value in that story for me. I don't share it that much. However, there is intrinsic built-in value. And there are many built-in value propositions that you can have from older people. They've lived an entire life. And so hearing some of their stories, I've really been able to reflect and apply it to myself.
Yeah, look, I have learnt so much on this journey with you when it comes to biblical stories. And I was raised Catholic. You were raised Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But there's such a vast difference between how we were raised. And I went to church, every Sunday like a good little Catholic girl, and just went with the process. Go in, come out, follow the procedures, follow the protocols, but didn't really get to know deeply some of the stories in the Bible. And like you said, whether you believe it or not, some of the stories in there, the allegories, the metaphors, all those beautiful things in there, we can take so much from that and apply it to everyday life. I think for me, it's like a compass for me to come back to default to. And a lot of the stories you share are so relevant to us, being able to help us get through life's obstacles and life's challenges. And I think that has really pulled us closer as well. And in terms of being Jordan's, parents as well, having that to fall back on has really helped. But, talk to us about another thing, speaking about belief. Like, where do you think your belief in yourself comes from? Because I know a lot of times I catch myself not having quite the same self-belief as you, and you catch it too. You notice it. You notice how doubt creeps in, fear creeps in, and you're just like, no, we got to nip that in the bud.
I think it comes from competence. To give you a real answer, competence is what is born out of self-belief is what is born out of competence. And competence can be gained by young adolescent boys through sport or through small jobs at home. In my situation, I had a single mum, so I didn't have small jobs. They were all just big jobs. And because they were all big jobs, I developed competence very early and at a very young age. And when it transitioned to sport, my ability to take responsibility quicker happened at a snap of the fingers, which means that I got greater results at a compounded effect quicker than most. So my self-belief and getting that dopamine hit, completing the vacuuming, making my bed, doing my laundry on my own, ironing my clothes on my own. My mum taught me just last week, and then I did it myself. Competence. And then that enabled me to get confident. When I repeated it over and over again, I fell in love with the process, and I became more in love with self, more in love with my own belief that I can do it. And that just continued to reinforce itself. We have to recognize that this was born under a lot of pressure in a household. Like, we were homeless a lot of the time. Gas, electricity was turned off. Mum wasn't around. I had to buy books to sell books for the following year, and I only had one pair of school clothes for secondary school or for primary school. So it's not like I was comfortable. Everything was difficult. Yeah. So I was only left with being able to execute competently. If I missed a little detail, it meant great expense to me and my family. So growing up now, these days, I'm not too stressed by much. Yeah. It's not really much that could happen to me that I haven't gone through.
Wow. Yep. But I also remember this other story you shared with me about how you developed self-belief, and it had to do with your primary school teacher. Something about learning your ABCs. I'd love for you to share that story, if that's okay.
It's kind of the same story, I guess, in many ways. But just like how my mum would give belief to me to iron my clothes, there was a time where I was I was very socially, I was introverted. So going to kindergarten I wasn't able to go to kindergarten. I would be very scared and afraid, and I didn't go. And so as an effect of that, I didn't learn my ABCs or my 1, 2, 3s. And when I got to primary school prep, I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I didn't know colors, I didn't know what was happening at school. All I knew is that they would put me down to sleep in the afternoon, and that was my favorite part. Right? I got to grade 4 or 5, and my teacher, Mrs. Bowden, noticed that I was really struggling with a lot of the fundamentals in school, and she was going to hold me back for 1 year. One day she sat me down and went through the homework with me. She carved out her own time. She stayed back on her own watch, and she said, "Tumai, I know you can do it. You can do it. Just go through it slowly." Something about that turned my brain on, and that belief that she passed on because she really wanted me to get it. She had a conversation with my mum wanting to hold me back in the year. For some reason, because she made an impact in that conversation and because her level of care was so high, I could feel it. I felt like I had to get this. Like somehow I needed to comprehend what this question on this test was asking of me, and I needed to get the answer right. I Life started in my brain. I was able to comprehend more information than ever before. I moved from drawing Dragon Ball Z characters to being able to mathematically understand things, to be able to read the basics. When I got to from year 6, grade 6 to year 7, primary school to high school is the biggest move. Something popped off in me and I was able to really understand and apply myself to my homework. And, you know, sad part is that kids these days, they had given so much. I had to work so hard just to be able to read questions on an essay. Yeah, sure, I didn't get the best scores in high school, but it turns out my character skews more entrepreneurially. The system didn't fit me to begin with. I'm more of a practical learner. I understand building and construction because I can touch things and I can smell things, and because I can hear and see things versus reading something from the left side of the page to the right side of the page and having to understand or comprehend black and white letters. It's just not going to happen for me.
Yeah.
So that belief that teacher had in me really passed on and enabled me. It opened up doors and options for me.
I think that's amazing because most of us go through life thinking, oh, because we don't do so well in school, that we don't get as many good grades, that, you know, we've completely got no options. But I love that ever since meeting you and getting to know you, Tumai, and seeing how intelligently you apply your skills to life, you really have completely changed how I think about being book smart versus being just, I guess, street smart. Would that be the right word? I don't know. Street smart, just smart in everything in life outside of books. You know?
So like it's all practical for me.
Yeah.
For most boys, that was very practical. And then you're starting to learn the power. Perhaps you're practical.
Yeah.
Perhaps
Right.
that's the case. I've seen you work and learn visually and with your hands faster than reading a book, actually.
Yeah, but in school they teach you that it's just the books and that you got to remember everything in the books and then get the answers right. And because of this realization recently and how I knew that not everyone fits into the school system properly, but seeing this and how you've applied things in life and how you get results at a greater level than anyone else that I know has really helped me to kind of take my foot off the brakes when it comes to my son and not be so stressed as a mum. You know, like he's not like a straight A student, but I am so relaxed for the first time ever, understanding or realizing that, hey, maybe he's more entrepreneurial based, right? And we did do a test too. We did some special test which showed that he was more skewed towards being an entrepreneur. So I think the lesson here for just from our experience in general as parents is, there's so many other skills that they have, and we have to be aware of where they're strong in and where they're not strong in, and to just lean in towards what they are strong in and to nurture them in those areas. And you've really taught me how to do that when it comes to my son, and you highlighting certain things that he's really strong in. Like, yeah, you've noticed all the little things. You're very good as well, might I add, at reading micro expressions. I can't get away with anything with this guy. He'll see something across in my eyeballs and he goes, you just had a thought. What was that all about? Like, tell me a bit more about how you honed that skill when it comes to reading people so well, or even like, you know, has that got to do with your training anywhere in the work environment, or has it got to do with your breath work training, or where did you pick that up from?
At a young age, I'm pushed around to be around a lot of adults to make bigger sales than what normally someone of my age group would be doing. So a part of those skills, when gaining respect from other men around a boardroom, or when being able to know when the right timing is to close, when to ask for business, or being able to know if it's safe or not, or what's happening or what's going through their mind. A lot of the communication, I've been told, it's 90% subconscious. and 10% conscious. So what they are saying isn't necessarily what they are meaning. And so you can gather the rest of the data points from body language, from tonality, from the eye contact, and their overall way that they approach different points. You can learn a lot more about it. So me having to be around grown-ass adults, I had to learn some of these skills early on in order to at least gain some sort of upper hand. You got to understand that to be an adolescent or a maturing male and to operate and to perform in a male-dominated industry, you need skills. You need to be highly competent and very sharp. Not just sharp, but charismatically sharp at the same time, right?
Yeah.
You need to be able to make them laugh, but also look them dead in the eye and close the deal, right? And so those skills are what I had to practice just, I think, because I had that personal development nature about myself, right? I was always honing my character. I had always seen it as a game, that if I could just work on this extra skill, I am one skill away, one little talent away, one little micro expression away from that sale or from understanding what's going through that person's mind so I could say or present my case in different words. That mattered to me, and that is what was important. So I developed that skill in order to operate in a male-dominated, highly sophisticated industry.
I think that that's just a skill that everyone should have, like regardless of what industry you're in or whether you're in a male-dominated one, because what I've learned from you is like you knowing how to read people that well actually translates into our relationship. Like being able to read my micro expressions, being able to read where my eyeballs go and understanding what I'm thinking. It was a really funny moment we had the other day where I had this moment, this thought, and my eyeballs shifted from corner to corner and he knew immediately what was going on. And so I think that's phenomenal. Like your attitude and your philosophy to life about honing your skills and getting better at it. Actually, it's like what they say all the time, the old adage, how you do anything is how you do everything, right?
Yeah.
And you being able to do that in the boardroom, in the bank, wherever you're working, your finance business, and then you probably didn't even know it was going to translate into our relationship, how important that role was going to be, or that pattern and habit was going to be.
Absolutely not. And I find it to be very useful and enjoyable. And what to say here? I feel like it's something that, yeah, absolutely, to mirror what you're saying, that everybody needs to learn it. It is a skill that is transferable across many places.
Yeah, it really develops relationships across the board, and you just knowing how to read me or preempt, and then knowing what to say or how to deal with a situation is so useful and so important for many of us. I'm an easy read though for Tumai. Yeah, so we have a lot of funny moments. And I think that's what gets us through the hard days sometimes. We have our ups and downs. We have our funny moments. We have Mr. Cheeky, Mr. Funny, Mr. Serious.
You have to remember that I am introverted, so I spend a lot of time on my own. And then I go out to the world to test what I've worked on.
Yep.
And then it's used as like almost like an error check.
Right.
Does it work? Does it integrate into society? If not, let's throw it out. Let's rework the model. So that's kind of been my nature, given that kindergarten wasn't really a thing. Primary school didn't really work for me. High school I started to get better. It wasn't until I was about 19 to 22 years of age that when I started to go out, go to bars and go to clubs and practice socially what was possible within a conversation, and then I'd go back to the boardroom, my own internal boardroom, and write down different maps and different ways to approach conversation. It wasn't until then that I realized, this whole thing is just a huge game. I have nothing to be nervous about. Once I realized that, I started to go out more and say wild things, like to see if I could just get away with it. And initially I would be nervous, or even just having the sense of rejection from other women to go approach an entire group. Just that alone, if I approached and I got away with an approach and I made everybody laugh, and I said a few crazy wild things and I ended up with a phone number at the back of it, that to me, I'll go home and say, this is wild social experiment. And then I'll go do it again the next weekend.
Yep.
And so I think also my ability to take risks and want to learn more and treat this as a mini game is what has enabled me to get certain results in certain ways.
Yeah, like basically you're saying, there's no point being fearful. Like just take the risk. Don't be afraid to even make mistakes because making a mistake is just another opportunity to make it better
Yeah.
the next time around, right? And that kind of leads me to this question I want to ask you because to me, you've always been pretty fearless, pretty courageous. You're not afraid to take risks. You're not afraid to look silly or sound silly. But what do you remember a time in your life where you felt you were a little scared, or never?
There's probably many moments where I did feel scared, but I think it's when you run a pattern for so long, it gets worked out of you very easily, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Just likewise, when people, you can tell that they're in a state of fear by their body language and by them really worrying and playing with their fingernails. That's a pattern. The way that I walk and the way that I talk and approach life, it's come from both socially what I was doing at a certain age and also jumping into the ring to get hit and be humbled and hit other people and lose fights and win fights in kickboxing, hit people in rugby, go out and see what I could do at a bar or a club socially. Like all of these combinations sort of have enabled me to see society in a vastly different way than what most introverts would when they just stay inside.
Yeah, I love that. Look, we're coming up to the end of the podcast. As we wrap up, I want to also ask you this really interesting question because you always talk about life being a game, or sometimes even tell me that it feels like you're in your own movie, right? So, if you were in your own movie, Tumai, would you be the protagonist or the antagonist?
My own movie?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the movie of my life or a movie that I wanted to choose?
A movie you want to choose to be in.
Antagonist.
An antagonist.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a bit boring being protagonist.
Yeah.
It's so repetitive. Yeah, cool, hero, inspiring. Everyone admires you, but the peak euphoria in the antagonistic story of a movie is something that is never touched by a hero, and that's something that I've always actually respected from characters such as Conor McGregor all the way through to Mike Tyson. You hear insane, wild things from their life story. A protagonist will never get anywhere near that. And that's something that they could always take away from living a good life. At least they can reflect on something that they did that they were proud of versus the hero. Yeah, just remember that what was that movie? The Incredibles 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Not sure if you've watched it, but like I don't know, it's very boring being the hero.
Yeah.
The antagonist, it brings a character out in us that I find a lot of people hide, but it's actually there in a lot of us. We also look up to the person that can take a risk. And I thoroughly enjoy the benefits of if the risk was to pay off, what the payoff would be, because you can almost see it pay off. And although it's not necessarily good for society, it's good for that antagonist at that time for how he views things. And I love learning about that particular life story. You also get to learn about what to avoid if you were to study an antagonist. Oh, definitely don't like fascism or socialism or communism. Yep, that better stay away from that. So it provides wisdom as well.
Wow, that's a whole other angle. I mean, that's the rebel that we're hearing come out of Tumai right there. And so without further ado, that's what we got to meet, and we got to know Tumai more than I think we've ever done, ever. But as we move through and progress through and make more podcasts, you're going to get to know both of us a lot better. And we can't wait to see you on the next one. So that's all for now, folks. We'll see you soon.
Bye for now.
Bye. Peace.
SLB.